Hi there, hope you're okay. So I'm just going to go through this web application. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to split it into two parts. So the first part is literally just me going to reel off sort of like recommendations from a user experience perspective and also a user interface perspective, looking at, just things that you could do to automatically improve the experience. The second part, I'll go into more detail and more granular information about how I, in my personal opinion, would improve this maybe on a longer term sort of scale. So, yeah, so first of all, when you're designing, I just check for sort of like consistency in terms of like font sizes and things. So here the search is quite overly big. I don't feel like that's completely necessary for this. And also I see that there's no branding on this page either. So like product branding, which is usually seen in the top left. So I definitely add that in as well. Color wise, I'm also not sure if the colors really work. Um, and what I would do is maybe look at other applications to kind of see what your audience like in particular. And I'm going to go into more detail about your audience and your users a little bit later on. So one thing that I did find is when I came to the page, I, as a user, you want to feel like it's intuitive. So there are a couple of things that, first of all, I was like, oh, what do I do? And one way that you could do that is bringing out one of the features, like a component, to say like, what is going to be the most used feature of this platform. Once you have that information, you can maybe bring that call to action out onto the page, because when the user first comes onto the page, it's pretty much like a blank screen. So where could you put that button? Maybe it could be like in the top right. And also maybe you might want to create this as more of like a dashboard. Or you might want to have straight away, as soon as they log in, they see that inbox. Because this blank space on the right kind of looks a little bit unfinished and can look a bit confusing to the user as well, like should something be there or not. So the possibility of actually having maybe something here so that they, as soon as the user comes to the page, they've got an action that they can complete, would be quite advantageous as well. So I just want to say to you, I haven't actually explored all the other sort of pages. So what I'm sort of like seeing is going to be for like the first time. So I'm just going to kind of say what kind of comes into my head, if that's okay. So I'm guessing this is, and I'm working a lot off intuition here. So I'm guessing this is like a task that I might want to do for work. So respond to email about the fish. Okay, so obviously, probably, I think that's probably like some sort of error. Yeah, I don't think that's meant to do that. So subtask. Okay, I'm not sure. High priority. Okay, let me refresh the page. I don't think it was meant to do that. Okay, so this part's going to be quite hard for me to test because I think there's some sort of error. I'm not sure what mute is. Because mute and that icon is normally associated with music, and that's kind of like looking at familiarity. My guess, if I was to take a guess, would be mute notifications. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure about that. But I also noticed that actually there are no notifications here. So how would I know of like to alert me of what's kind of coming up? Okay, so I'm going to go off this subtask. Okay, because this one's done okay. Test that. Okay, and I'm guessing I can toggle that. Okay. Yeah, I do quite like the fact that you can toggle that feature. I think that's good because sometimes it can be quite overwhelming if you look at a task. That's telling me it's 160 characters. Sort by priority. Okay, I'm just going to refresh the page again. Add a section. So I'm going to say this is accounts. So work. Do you know what kind of makes me feel like maybe something's not sitting right is this inbox. It kind of feels like something's coming inbound to me because normally that's how a user would associate an inbox of like emails. It would like something that's incoming. So I'm not too sure about the language around that. Oh, okay. See, I had no idea that when you click that, this came on. Now, one thing that I would ask is, from your experience, do you know that users will want to assign a task, set a due date, or be reminded? Are they quite frequent things that a user would use? And if so, I would bring those components out onto here. Because it actually took some exploration and some learning to actually realize that they were there. And for users, it should be really quite straightforward. Like I know for a lot of applications which are sort of like similar to this, sometimes you want to be reminded, sometimes you want to kind of like set a due date, and I want to assign to somebody like Boris. Yeah. I can add notes in there. That's great. I can add a comment, and I can add an attachment. What I would do here is make sure that you have like an action button, because I don't know, as a user, do I click enter, or because if you start to create a design system, which is something that I would recommend for this, just to create the consistency between the user interface, is we've got this sort of button here, and we want to ensure that all buttons are the same sort of style and it's consistent. And then we've got like here, we've got like this colored long button. So the user doesn't have to go on a real educational process when they use your application, which will really help with that sort of like stickiness and getting them to return. Ensuring familiarity and consistency is like one of the key things. I'm guessing I just click enter, but it's okay. Yes. Okay, so I would definitely have like an upload button or something like that, just to kind of like confirm. Yeah, I like the separation between comments and attachments. Again, having that design system so you really know the difference between the button style. So we've got these type of buttons, we've got these types of buttons, we've got these types of buttons, and we've got these types of buttons. Quite a few buttons there. We normally would have a primary button style, secondary, and tertiary. Okay, so I would go off that. Okay, let me just, today, I've got nothing in for today assigned to me. They're ones that have come from other people. High priority, medium priority. Lists. I don't really know what a list is and how. I know what a list is, but I'm not sure where this has come from. I'm a little bit confused about this one. Oh, okay, so I can create a list. So these are like, yeah. So first of all, for shortcuts, I would actually have that in settings as a settings icon. For lists, chats. Okay, so you can chat to people. Now, can users chat to people? I guess because what is a little bit difficult about this is because it's not actually a workable sort of platform at the moment. I don't know. So hang on. If I just click hello, nothing seems to happen. I think really want to define what the user story is around this chat. So as a user, I want to be able to do this so that I can achieve this. And that's like a statement that you can kind of fill out of what is it that the user would want to do and why would they want to do it. So rather than just having the functionality of chat and you can add people and chat to them, am I able to link this chat to one of the tasks that I've set? Okay. Okay, so shortcuts, you go back to shortcuts. Okay, usually that would be like a home icon, which would be the logo in the top left-hand corner. Usually search is actually top right-hand corner. Okay, now you've got settings. Settings is there, okay. So notifications there. I would move the notifications, the settings and the account information to the top right hand corner. Users really like familiarity, which you hear me saying quite a lot. Even just a split second of something taking a little bit longer to figure out can literally be the case of somebody using your app and really enjoying it and somebody actually just literally saying, I'm not going to use that again. So it's quite crucial to kind of keep things consistent. I'm trying to understand what is the difference between a list here and creating a list here. Because if I wanted to do like shopping list, I could easily type it shopping list. Oh, let me do that again. And then create subtasks. So I'm struggling to understand the use case for this list here. So I would definitely do some testing around that with your users to see if what their feedback is. And that's something that I'm really going to encourage for you to actually do because you've already got this prototype. A lot of what I say will be an assumption based upon the experience that I have, but what you really need to do is validate these assumptions. And to do that, you'd need to get 5 to 6 users and you would get them to test the platform in a sort of recording scenario like I'm doing now, and get that feedback from them. Now, there can be a way to sort of um, put a strategy together to make sure you're getting the right sort of responses back. But I think that's the best way to sort of like go about it, so that you can understand exactly what it is that your users are looking for and what the use cases are for this as well. Yeah, I'm just like, I don't know where folders has come from either, because I can't seem to like add a folder. Because I see this as a bit of a list. Yeah, so I'm trying to understand the different use case for the inbox users and people who use lists and people who use chats. Okay. So in terms of sort of like user interface, aside from like the color and things like that, I think using icons which represent sort of what it is you're working on, like the calendar and things like that, are quite straightforward. That's quite easy. The second part of the review for myself will be to essentially give you more of an insight into sort of like how I would kind of look at this. So what I see here is a web application which is used to for people to create their own lists and to keep a check on where things are up to. So I have a couple of questions. So my questions would be, okay, what is the value proposition that is sort of like setting you aside from other people within the market? Because I've seen quite a lot of these platforms before. I actually use one myself called Todoist. I don't know if you've come across that. You most likely have. And what is it that your users are trying to get done that they can't get done on the other platforms? So one thing that I would really say is like having a brand, I think, is really quite key to this. Actually having some sort of something that people can, when they see it, they can instantly go, this is recognizable. It's not just out of the box components and icons and things like that. We're actually creating more of like a look and feel. So that would definitely be the first step. And then having that design system. So then every time that you work on it, you're creating that consistency. But going back to like the value proposition, one thing I would look at is something called jobs to be done. So you can go on YouTube, there's many videos around jobs to be done, or, I actually can do this on your behalf if you need some support. And essentially what you're looking at is, who are my users? So you say anybody who's creating a task. But actually, this isn't for anybody, because somebody like my mum, this would just be far too complicated for that. Probably somebody who's like a doctor or something like that probably wouldn't use this either, because they have their own internal. So if you kind of see where I'm getting at, we're narrowing it down. Actually, it's not for everybody or anyone who wants to. It's and to actually really understand our users and the market, what we need to do is actually create something that might be used with a purpose in mind, because when we do that, we can really understand how to improve the user experience for those particular type of people. Because and if you said, okay, actually a doctor can use this, but so can a business person, but they're going to have different use cases, and they're going to have a different reason why they would want to use this and how they would want to use this. So as you get feedback, if you try to create something that's very general and kind of like a one size fits all, you really end up putting this in a box that doesn't actually cater to everybody's needs. Whereas if you said, actually, I want to use this this is going to be solely for freelancers who are like on the go, This is going to be for those people who have loads of different tasks going on from the different clients and things like that. They might have like 20 clients on the go. It's going to be for those type of people, and that's the people I'm going to target. You can then look at like, right, what is the job that they need to get done? What is that core functional job? And that core functional job might essentially be to keep track of where my clients are up to. So they have like a goal of where they want to be, and they have where they are now. And your product essentially kind of fills in that middle section. So they're not actually too fussed how they get there. They just know they need to get there to achieve that goal, and it needs to be as simple, intuitive, um, and as sort of like, yeah, just as straightforward as possible. And it needs to be able to allow them to do it quite quickly, which is also very important as well. Because the danger that you have is that you kind of maybe, um, if you look at your competitors to see what they're doing, they could just switch platform, and that's not what you want. So if you actually cater to their core functional needs, and then you can look at the emotional needs, then you can look at the social needs. And there are always functional, emotional, and social needs within um, their actual main user needs. So basically, a user can have 50 to 150 needs per job. So for that core functional job that they're wanting to achieve, which might be to be able to keep track of things, under that they could have 50 to 150 needs. And what I would do is I would write everything down, or find out all those needs, do user interviews, do surveys, really understand the user and that market that you're catering towards, and then figure out what are the unmet needs that they actually can't get from your competitors. And when you actually do that, then you will start to look at, okay, perfect, I can now develop this and this, because there's a problem. Your user will always come with a problem that they need to be solved. And from looking at this from a user experience perspective, I'd like to understand, okay, what is that need that they're trying to fulfill? And what are the unmet needs? And the unmet needs are the most crucial ones. And that is what is going to differentiate you from the competitors. And I think statistically, they say it's about, you need to have something better than competitors, but it's got to be like 20% better to actually steer customers from one platform to another, and to also keep that retention as well. If it's only 5% better, it's not going to be good. It's not going to make people sort of like move. But if it's not as good, but it's more expensive, you're in trouble there. If it's not as good, but it's cheaper, you might have a little bit of a market. But it's really understanding that job that you want to be done. And also statistically, I think it's 86% of people who apply the jobs to be done method will have a successful outcome when they launch this product. An ideas first approach, which is what this is, will have a lot lower success rate. And that's because what generally happens is we have these ideas based upon assumptions and things that we think are the best approach without involving the users. And then what will happen is we end up then trying to iterate based upon that feedback. But because we've never really understood the user needs, we don't know if we're capturing any of those 50 to 150 user needs. We might actually be capturing a user need that actually a user can go and get done elsewhere. And that's what we don't want. So that's why it's quite crucial to do that sort of like jobs to be done. Also, if we're looking at from like a behavioral aspect, are we trying to get our users to do something that they don't normally do on other platforms? Are we needing to change a behavior? If that's correct, we are needing to change a behavior. because actually we know by them doing it this way, it's going to be better if you've got that sort of hypothesis, then what I would recommend to do at that point is then we need to sort of like look at how can we change a behavior. So the jobs to be done would sort of like be the first step. Then you look at, do I need to change a behavior? Do I not? Or do I just need to create a great experience? Look at your value proposition. Do I know what it is that I'm trying to bring to the market that is different from my competitors? And then you can actually look at, right, once I've got that, what are my user stories? So as a user, I want to be able to do this, because you've already understand now the jobs and the unmet needs. You're on your way to kind of like really understanding what features you want from that. And that's, so the user stories essentially are statements that users would say, as a user, I need this so that I can do that. And you create a bunch of those statements for those unmet needs. And then what you would do once you've got those user stories, functionality comes from those user stories rather than the other way around. Sometimes we build functionality and then try to fit the user story to it. So user experience design is very user led, rather than kind of like assumption led, and we use data to drive design decisions. And that's how we ensure that when you take a product to market, it's a lower risk, and it's got a higher chance of being successful once it's actually launched. And that's what we want. And that's the sort of like advice that I would give, is to sort of like really involve those users, really understand what it is that you're trying to sort of like achieve. And yeah, I would say like definitely maybe do like a round of testing before you launch it to validate some of these assumptions. And then what I would do is launch it. Make sure you've got all your statistics set up, like Google Analytics, Hotjar, or Crazy Egg, which is a heat map software to track clicks. And what you're getting there is you're getting quantitative data. So quantitative data essentially is all those statistical insights into how users are using the application. When they log in, how many times they log in, we can look at retention rates, we can look at drop-offs, all that type of stuff. Combine that with qualitative research, which are one-to-one interviews, not surveys, sorry, surveys is part of quantitative, one-to-one interviews, field studies, so actually seeing people in their work environment actually using your application and things like that. Combine both of them and you get a really good story of what is going on, how can I improve this, what do I need to do, and you generate tons of insights. And that is data that you'll use then to drive the design decision. So I can tell you're really good at sort of like the development side of it. And you kind of mentioned yourself, but you just kind of work on the UI yourself, but you're not really sort of like a interface designer. So that's the path that I would definitely sort of take. And once you get the user experience right, then you can start to evolve. So every sort of couple of months, you can start to look at your insights on Google Analytics and Hotjar. Every 3 to 6 months, you can do further user testing to see, actually, I'm getting a lot of feedback on this. You'll start to maybe get emails of customer feedback that you'll want to save and see what is the most common thing that people are saying. Not just because you don't want to get feature creep. So you don't want just one person to say something. It'd be a great idea. You think, yeah, that's great, I'll add it. What we want is people to, a good range of people to actually be saying the same thing, because that is the majority of your users. So I hope this has been really helpful to you. And if you would like to iterate on the design and you need further sort of support, then I'd be more than happy to help.